So if someone is starting to do their own content, but they're looking at expanding, things are going good for them, and they're looking to hire a content creator, what are some of the things that you think make a good content creator, and what can someone expect to start working as they start growing online?
That's a really good question. So I think a good content creator will obviously need to understand the current landscape that we're in. I attribute a lot of sort of where my career went to the fact that so much is in social media right now. I think, I very much could have gone down a path that was much more focused on more technical, pieces of equipment or understanding new lighting techniques. And it just kind of blows my mind that while there's always going to be a time and a place for that, and I have mad respect for the individuals who really know what they're doing there, I certainly see my path as a content creator, now marketing manager, has really stemmed from understanding that you actually don't need all of the fancy schmancy production. If you are a good communicator and you are a good storyteller and you're able to have what you produce resonate with people, that's already lining you up for massive, massive success as a content creator. I think there's always going to be little nuances that sometimes can be taught, other times can't, regarding pacing, regarding rhythm, regarding what to actually include, regarding composition of your frames. How does this shot look versus how does that shot look? There's those little nuances that I think just come with experience. But any content creator in 2024 looking to get into this space into 2025, I think you have to be a great communicator, you have to be a great storyteller, you have to have a basic understanding of video, as well as other art and design principles such as lighting, composition, framing, pacing. But what better than to just hop on your Instagram feed and just see what other companies are doing and what's working well for them, right? I think you can very quickly see if you go to a new Instagram page you've never been to before. You can tell, are the reels very polished? Is it just an individual turning on their front-facing camera talking and they have 2.7 million views on average on each reel? Study the space, understand what works, and then come at it with your own unique lens as a creative, as someone who wants to be creative with regard to video content creation.
How important is figuring out your niche?
I do think now more than ever, it's way more important, especially with how saturated social media is. I think there was this really big influx maybe 10 years ago of sort of this lifestyle blogger, lifestyle YouTuber where you kind of can just take people along your day, going to a coffee shop in the morning, going to get a quick workout in, trying a new vegan restaurant for dinner, whatever it may be. I think that specific niche but kind of broad as well, lifestyle was huge 10 years ago, but because of the nature of social media is only growing, only more users are joining the platforms, every single day, what is it, like every single minute, like 10,000 hours are uploaded to YouTube or something crazy like that. So all to say that it's that much harder to break through if you're just kind of going more broad, right? So then to answer your question, I think niche is really important now more than ever regarding being able to build a community that does trust you and does believe and tap into what you're saying. I think a lot of that can be achieved through going at a specific angle, sort of having your unique experience within this specific subject matter to propel yourself forward and start building that community that you're looking to build.
Back to what I was talking about before with like hiring a content creator, or if you're going to start on your own journey, how important are, and you alluded to it a little bit, but the fancy equipment, can you get most of it done, especially with a new iPhone? Or, I mean, we've kind of grown as we started working more with our videographer, Bianca, then she started adding some more equipment, and now we have the mics, we have different lighting, she uses different cameras. But how much of that do you need, especially if you're just getting started? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think it's very situational. I think it's also, there's a time and place for everything. I would argue on like a sort of social media first approach, any end of the spectrum is sufficient. If you can take this little device and put together something that's very compelling in 15 to 30 seconds and entertaining or inspiring or educational, you just need some good lighting and a phone. But there's always going to be a time and place for understanding fancier equipment, for conveying a certain message that does sort of need that higher level of technical ability through nicer cameras, nicer lighting, nicer just overall equipment and software for post-production. So while I do see a time and place for either approach, I think it really comes down to it's a situational basis and depends on where you want to be. If it's social media first, yeah, turn on your front-facing camera, talk with conviction, talk with your passion and your joy, and you might have 1 million followers by next year. But there's always going to be space for fancy equipment and the deliverable you're looking to produce using that fancy equipment.
And a lot of what I feel like, a lot of it comes down to, no matter what equipment you're using, is the editing. I mean, we capture so much content for each video shoot, but it has to get compiled down. Probably one video shoot, if you average it out, probably takes an hour and 15 minutes to shoot the whole thing. It gets compressed to 30 to 60 seconds on the most of our videos. And I mean, the editing really has a lot to do with how the final product's going to come out. You know, I can make the food look amazing and nail the cook and everything, but if the editing's not right, it's, either way. Or I could screw up the cook and you could still make it look good with the editing, so you can go both ways with it.
Yeah, and I think the editing process, or the post-production process, if you will, that I do really think is what separates sort of the pros from the amateurs, right? So this idea of, if you are producing for social media, you need to grab that person's attention within, it used to be 3 seconds, I'd almost argue now within the first second and a half. That's just because the landscape continues to get more and more focused on social first, and consumers and viewers and users of these platforms are spending hours, and if you're not grabbing their attention within the first second and a half, I'm going to say nowadays, then they're going to swipe right past you, and all that hard work, all that technical experience, that understanding of lighting and production, well, it goes out the window because you didn't grab that person in the first second and a half. So, that's where it really comes to those nuances that I mentioned earlier of these little tricks and different ways of going about an edit that really allow it to shine and really does separate the pros from the amateurs.
Takeaways from other influencers in the space. This is something we've talked about, and we, even in our interview, we connected over Gary Vaynerchuk and some of his content, and we've talked over the years about guys like Alex Hormozi, and what's some of the things that, when you listen to those guys, that really hit home, that you see that the dots really connect, that we've put into place and seen results with?
Yeah, and I'll start off by saying I knew that was the start of a beautiful professional relationship when we bonded over that, after talking about Gary Vee in the interview. But no, I think listening to a lot of the influencers, and again, just understanding the space, I think what it really comes down to is we can't have this bias towards operating in a certain way. I've brought this up to you before, but there's a book I read a couple of years ago explaining this idea of a pet idea, sort of this idea that you think is going to work, but really it's an idea that you have a bias to. You're so excited about it. Well, if I like it, then everybody else is going to like it, and clearly this is the best way to go about it. We can't have that. We need an unbiased approach, and we need to understand where the attention is. And influencers like Gary Vee or Alex Hormozi and any entrepreneurial or motivational type creator in the space will preach to you that you need to be giving value to people. That's how you build business. That's how you build your brand. That's how you land brand partnerships and brand collaborations and brand deals as a creator or as an influencer. So really, I think to say at a high level, listening to these larger influencers is teaching you to not be biased, to not create something just because you like it or I mean, you should talk about your passions, but it's in a context that ultimately helps the consumer.
Right.
We are just creating where the attention is. As Gary Vee always says, attention is the number one asset. We are creating because we are unbiased. We understand where the landscape is. And to that very point, a year from now, 6 months from now, 5 years from now, the landscape could look totally different. And maybe
Right.
our strategy as a follow up to that is going to look very, very different. But
Right.
what we've learned is by being in this space in the now in 2024, we know that short form video is king right now. But in a year from now, I would like to think and hope that we understand enough with what we've done over the last 3 years to be able to make that quick adaptation and that quick pivot to whatever that new thing is. Maybe it's artificial intelligence, heavy.
You don't need
sort
me
of,
anymore. You can make the
yeah,
recipes without me.
right,
Um,
exactly. So, but you just never know, and I think it takes being unbiased and knowing where the attention is to really know where you're supposed to go. And yeah, that's probably the biggest takeaway from the influencers.
I mean, that gave me a lot of comfort when about 6 months ago they were talking about maybe banning TikTok from the United States for whatever reasons they had. And it really didn't scare me at all because deep down inside, having Gary in the back of my head say, it doesn't matter. That attention is going to go somewhere. You just have to move your efforts to where that attention is going to go. And we felt strongly, we had that conversation that there's just going to be more traction on YouTube, more attention on Instagram and Facebook Reels, and whatever other platform is going to kind of fill the void of TikTok. And I mean, people were shocked when I said it didn't matter to me. They thought like that was going to like ruin my world if TikTok went away. But honestly, just having the insight of that attention has to go somewhere, and we'll just go where that attention goes.
Marketers before social media put a heavy emphasis on TV commercials. Marketers before TV commercials put a heavy emphasis on radio. It's just
Newspaper.
going to keep iterating itself, and I would like to hope and think that we will be at the forefront and we'll be able to quickly pivot to whatever that next thing is.
Right. So if someone is really new to the space and they want to get started marketing in this digital landscape, what is some advice that you can give someone as they're just getting started?
Yeah, good question. It's funny. Someone just asked me about this like a week or two ago. If you're looking to get into marketing, by the way, I by no means know everything in the marketing space. I am constantly a sponge, and I'm always growing. I really only what I can go off of is my experience and what I know. So this is, of course, from my anecdotal perspective here, but
Yeah.
I would recommend trying to join a creative team, whether you have some video editing experience, you've maybe started your own social media, and you want to get into posting social media for other brands and organizations. And if you have some sort of skill set that can work within marketing, within the digital landscape, your website, your maybe coding and programming, your video editing, your social media posting, I definitely recommend trying to join a creative team that can allow those skill sets to flourish for you. And from there, if you're wanting to continue to move up, then I recommend really kind of sitting with understanding what the company is needing and sort of what angles it's needing to take within branding. And from there, you'll really need to understand just all the different facets that make a good marketing program and a good marketing strategy. But I think the first step would be sort of joining that creative team, or even starting up as a freelancer, offering services on various marketplaces online that you can go through. Trying to think of the name of one, Upwork maybe. There's a couple different ones. I'm blanking on the names, but sort of getting that initial experience on a creative team or as a freelancer. And if you're wanting to continue moving up, then start to understand the different components that make up a solid marketing strategy.
Yeah, I think that speaks, you could really pick the industry, it doesn't have to be marketing, but going to work someplace where you feel like you'll fit in and you see the vision of what that company's doing, something, if you're striving to do something, ultimately if you want to be in business for yourself, go work for a business that you want to run. and be a sponge as much as you can to shorten the learning curve, because that's something that I like to talk about, is how much we've learned over the last 15 years in the business world, not just but in marketing, but on the operational side of the hospitality industry. And if you go talk to someone like me, or Darren Worth from Iowa Smoky D's, or somebody that has been in the weeds and running these operations, you can learn a lot and kind of shortcut some of the mistakes that we've made, because we've made a ton of mistakes and we've learned so much over the years in all facets of the business, not just in, how to cook the brisket, but also how to market it and how to run your P&Ls and how to charge properly for it. So no matter what business you're looking to go into, you can go work somewhere that's similar to that, at least in your mind, and try to figure out how you can be an asset to that business and just learn as much as you can along the way.
And by the way, I empathize with any sort of prospect, candidates looking to get into the space, because so many companies nowadays say, oh, we need 5 years of experience. Well, I need to get my experience somewhere. So it's, it gets tricky for a lot of the newer individuals looking to get started in their career. That's where, similar to what you're saying, like, get out there, figure out who you can work for. Maybe it's not totally in line with what you're currently passionate about, but maybe it's adjacent to it, and it can be a good stepping stone for you to eventually get to where you want to be with regard to your career and what you're passionate about and what sort of fills your cup with what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, even for you, it's not like you were like super passionate about barbecue, and you didn't even we didn't even know what the exact plan was going to be when we hired you. We just fell into the barbecue show to really build brand awareness. And like you mentioned earlier in the conversation, we didn't know what kind of beast we were building, and that's why we're ready to pivot, like we talked about, and kind of change directions slightly, still keeping our foot on the gas from a content creation point of view, but really dialing in how we're going to have more conversion for Sweet Baby Ray's catering, and then if that works, being able to use that for True Cuisine and Deuces Wild as well.
Right. And it's those challenges that really excite me personally and keep me really motivated, is trying to figure out, I've always prided myself. I pride myself on being very analytical and meticulous and thorough with everything that I do. So having this unique challenge within this organization really fuels me to, it gets me excited, it gets me out of bed and looking forward to my day to sort of solve these problems. So again, anybody looking to join a company, find what you get excited about too, and see if that can kind of blend in and work well with sort of the overall plans that the business maybe has as well. So.